What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Most Excellent Entertainment Podcast. I'm your host, Keith. And with me this week, we have a comic book writer who takes the genre the medium into very interesting genres. Let's just say that. And Mr. John Lees, all the way from Scotland. Welcome.
Hello.
Podcast.
Nice to have me on.
Thank you for coming on. This is really, really cool. So I had it all in my mind that I was going to structure this thing, but I love, and then Emily was gone so much that I really want to talk about it first.
Well, that's a deep dive. I've had blast from the past. That's good to hear.
Yeah. Are you, I mean, I know the book's over like more than 10 years old now. Are you tired of talking about it or?
No, I know I would never get bored of talking to them when I was gone. All of my comics are like my children, so they're all still precious to me, no matter how old they are.
Sure. And that was that your second professional?
Yeah, my first comic was a superhero book called The Standard, which did quite well. But And Then It Was Gone was my first real breakout book, which kind of really seemed to kind of pick up an audience. And it was what kind of got me known as being a horror writer. So yeah, it's a comic that has a very special place in my heart. It was also the first comic that I did that was set in Scotland. And since then, I remember when I was first going to do it, I was getting a lot of advice like. I wouldn't do a book set in Scotland. That might be very marketable, but now it's kind of became like my thing. I keep on constantly doing books set.
Right. Because Think is in Scotland as well.
Yeah, and the Nasty.
Yeah. So I found out about the book through Free Comic Book Day. So
Oh yeah, the zero issue.
yeah. So how important do you think that was to get a book during Free Comic Book Day?
Well, Free Comic Book Day is massive. Like if you're talking like just in terms of the visibility, you go from let's say maybe like you're selling like a few thousand copies of like your book like when it's getting released in comic shops to suddenly like 100,000 hundreds of thousands of units are
Right.
just in because all the comic shops are just getting all the Free Comic Book Day books in. So suddenly, like that level of visibility, and like Comics Tribe and Tyler James, who is the publisher at Comics Tribe, are really clever because they timed um, the issue zero Free Comic Book Day with like a reprint of the collected edition graphic novels. So, and they had an ad in the back page saying like, "Oh, do you like this book? Well, you can now order it from here."
Yeah.
So a lot of people were maybe who were checking that kind of little prequel out were then going, "Oh, that's interesting," and then they had a chance to pick up the whole book in case it had gone under the radar.
Yeah. It was really smart. Like I said, that was how I found out about the book, and then I read it and I reread it for to get ready for the podcast. And there's so many interesting things. Like I don't know if you've gotten this question before,
Yeah.
but is the book does everything that happens in the book actually happen?
Right, well, to kind of answer this, I kind of feel like the best response I can give to any questions about what's going on is the answer that the artist Ian Laurie gave. Me and Ian Laurie were at New York Comic Con in I want to say New York Comic Con 2014,
Okay.
or maybe in 2015, whatever the year it was. Like we were sitting at a bar in New York and someone came up to us that recognized us from the show and they were like, oh, I love And Then Emily Was Gone.
Yeah.
It's a great book. And they said to Ian, but what happened at the end? Like, I don't get what
Mhm.
was happening. Like, you had Vin standing there and you had Fiona standing there. Like, what happened next? And
Yeah.
Ian said, well, what do you think happened next? And then so this guy went, well, what I would say is, and this guy explained what his theory was, and Ian went, well, that's what happened then.
That's awesome.
Whatever you think happened is what
Yeah.
happened. It's all true. And I don't want to spoil anyone else's interpretation by saying like, well, this is what was going on because I think everybody like has their own version of it. Like, and I want it
Yeah.
all to be fully valid. So I don't want to kind of like sully anyone's interpretation by saying, no, this is what happened or that's what happened.
Okay, right on. That works for me. I mean, because
Um,
my interpretation of it was there was some people in the book who were out of their mind. That's how I took it. Like, because people reacted so like pulling giant worm things out of the back of your head and putting them in a box is not normal. You know,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
I feel like if
Well,
you
have you ever seen Scotland?
well, fair, but
Yeah, that's quite normal. No,
okay, well there you go.
no, but like, for me, like, yeah, that I definitely was operating the kind of like the book's operating the kind of level of emotional hysteria, but also
Sure.
it's operating this kind of like level of unreality, this kind of nightmare logic reality. And like
Yes.
me and Ian had a lot of the similar influences when we were talking about what this book, was going to be. We were both heavily inspired by David Lynch, and Twin Peaks, and like Mulholland Drive.
Sure, sure,
We're
sure.
also really inspired by like the films of Ben Wheatley, like stuff like Kill List, which kind of operates in this kind of like downward spiral into nightmare and starting off kind of somewhat like the real world and getting further and further away from it. And a big one that we both drew from was I'm not sure if you ever saw the John Carpenter film In the Mouth of Madness.
Mm,
Um,
sure.
but that was like a big kind of touchstone for the both of us. And Ian Laurie, like, is such a singular, like, strange artist.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
so, and like, I was a fan of his. I was such a big fan of his before we got a chance to do this book. So I always like to joke and say that And Then Emily Was Gone was essentially Ian Laurie fanfic for me, where I was just writing stuff that I wanted him to draw, and I could see how he would
That's
do it.
awesome.
And I
That's
think it's
awesome.
quite interesting because the relationship that me and Ian had was like something not quite like anything else that I've done in comics. Where, for example, something like Sync, me and Alex are like simpatico, like Alex Cormack, the artist of Sync. We are
Mhm.
like on the same wavelength. We have the same sense of humor. We have the same storytelling sensibilities. And I'll write something, and Alex will be like, "Yep, I'll draw that." And it's like, "Is that how I imagined it?" And we're just like real, like in lockstep. But
Yeah.
me and Laurie have like we're like polar opposites in lots of ways, and we have like really different storytelling sensibilities. So every
Mhm.
decision at every stage of Red Emily Was Gone, there was this kind of like pull in opposite directions where we were kind of like moving in different ways, but not like in a hostile way. It was very collaborative, but like just that kind of like like contrast and what way we're going to go here. So the end result is like when you read it is by far the most kind of like sort of sort of traditionally coherent, character driven, plot driven, classically narrative thing that Ian's
Yeah.
ever done. But it's also like the most out there and bizarre and surreal thing that I've ever done. So it's kind of operating this like middle ground between our two different storytelling sensibilities.
Right. Right. So I want to give you my take on the thing. So
Okay.
I feel like that at the end when Emily is like, I just want to go home, you know, and then her friend uh decides that she's a monster and sets her on fire. To me, that was where it all kind of clicked together that the monsters weren't real. Everyone was just kind of insane and they were seeing all these things that weren't actually there. Like yeah, so that was my decision at the end of
Well,
it.
if you think that's what happened, then that's what happened.
Right on. That was my decision at the end of it, was that it was like a study of insanity and sleep deprivation, and yeah, that was my take at the end. So
A valid theory.
and that was a very tragic way to end the thing. Like you spend the whole book looking for her and then finally save her,
I
and
think
she's like,
that's why people
yeah.
keep on even now, like over 10 years later, people still keep on asking me, like, are you going to do a sequel? Are you going to do another one? Like,
Right.
because I think it's because it's kind of up in the air so much, and they want to see
Yeah.
like that can't be it. There has to be more. And the running joke that me and Dean have is we say, well, if this was like our version of Twin Peaks, we're going to wait 25 years and then we'll come back and do another
Hey,
one
it'll work, right?
then. If we're still alive at that point, we'll see.
Yeah. So you mentioned Sync and also you worked on Oxymoron as well. One of the
Yeah.
things that I think is very interesting about those two books and a lot of Comic Tribes books in general is the art looks very like classic superhero art, but it hides these stories that are insane. you know?
I think that's like that says something about like just the origins of Comics Tribe and where they came from and like the original like, inspirations because Tyler James, who is like a great guy, like one of like my oldest friends in comics and like such a great mind for comics in terms of like how he's innovated with crowdfunding and like hybrid crowdfunding and direct market models. But like I think when you look at like his inspiration, like and like his like comics origins, a lot of it is very rooted in like the 1990s superhero boom, where he has a lot of things in his head like holograph covers and like and things like that. And you can see like when you really look at the original launch line of Comics Tribe,
Mhm.
almost the entire line was like almost like 90s style kind of deconstructionist superhero takes, where you
Sure.
had the standard was my comic, which was about a superhero of the 1960s who comes out of retirement to investigate the death of his former sidekick. Then you also had Epic, which was Tyler James's book about the
I
kind of like
yeah.
the teenage superhero. You had Scam, which was like by Joe Mulvey, which was like superpowered con men in Las Vegas. And then the Oxymoron actually got its start in the Red 10, which was a superhero book, a team book, a
Right.
murder mystery. And the funny story was the first New York Comic Con we ever did in 2011. We did that show together. And at the time, Tyler had released the Red 10 issue 1. And Oxymoron was never meant to be a significant character. The whole idea was supposed to be he was going to be a red herring where he was on the cover, but then he gets killed off at the end of issue 1. It's like, oh, now it's
Right.
a murder mystery about who's going to be killing off the superheroes. But Red 10 sold gangbusters of that show because everyone was like, who is this guy? That guy looks so interesting. I want to read more about him. And then it
Yeah.
became like, this character's actually got a breakout potential here. So we started exploring, like, what else can we do with Oxymoron? And like, as we got more into that character, it became more of a kind of like horror tilt. And then when I did, and then Emily Was Gone, which ended up being Comics Tribe's most successful book yet at the time, that was a horror book. So I think then he started to kind of see a little bit of a shift in like influence. And the great thing with the relationship with me and Tyler is that because we know each other so well, and because like I've done some books for Tyler that have like been pretty successful and have like punched above their weight in terms of their presence in the direct market and sales and all
Mhm.
that. A lot of times like I'll pitch a book to Tyler and I'll be like, I mean, I don't really get it. I'm not sure, but I trust you, John, so let's go for it. So it ends up being
Right.
it's quite different from what he'd normally do. So we kind of shifted away from superheroes and more into like horror and weird thrillers and a fantasy book with Grogor and Shanks, which is a thing we have coming up in 2026. So I think he's kind of like he's open-minded enough, Tyler, to think, well, let's try some different things and see what works.
Yeah, yeah. It's funny. Um, I'm pretty sure I read the Standard when it first came out. It was the 1960s, and
Yeah.
the
And then
the
kind of
side
flash back and forth between
does the
like
sidekick end up not actually? Oh well, let's not talk about that just in case someone's read the book. But I'm pretty sure I read that book. That's funny, and
Thank
I
you.
get
I think you're maybe one of the 10 people that did, so thank you.
yeah. Hey, there you go. And and uh and Red 10 is like that's based on sort of the Agatha Christie
Yeah, it's like
story,
I
right?
never none. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, and speaking of things based on things, uh, you came up with one of the coolest concepts I think that I've ever heard of. I am a big pro wrestling fan. I have worked in the pro wrestling business actually previously, and
Oh, that's
you
cool.
you wrote a book. Yeah, it's a wild man. It's something. but but you wrote a book that is a pro wrestling book based in the set in the city of New Orleans.
Yeah.
Um, it's a horror story and it's based on Macbeth.
Yeah. The Crimson Cage, a retelling of William Shakespeare's Macbeth against the backdrop of the 1980s territory system.
Wow.
And
So
the
where
funny
did
thing,
that?
the kind of backstory behind that was
Yes.
like I've always wanted to do a wrestling comic. I'm like a lifelong wrestling fan as well,
Oh,
and like
awesome.
going back to like the days of like when I'd done the standard, and I was like, well, what's my next project going to be? I had these ideas like I want to do something that's set like in like the early in the 80s era, pre WWF at the time, WWE now. Like a kind of like NWA territory system, like kind of there's some wild stories going on back then. I want to do something that's set in them, but I had a setting in my head and a kind of backdrop of like a wrestling story, but I didn't know what the story was going to be. I didn't know who the characters were going to be, so I kind of like put that in the kind of like melting pot and left it to sit for a bit. And
Mhm.
then fast forward like a good while later. And I remember, like, I've always loved, I'm a big Shakespeare fan. Like, I did English literature in school, so I love Shakespeare too. And Macbeth is like probably my favorite Shakespeare play. And I remember it would have been about 2016, I want to say. I saw Akira Kurosawa's Throne of Blood. and it blew me away. I thought this movie's incredible, and I thought like what like an incredible way of like doing Macbeth and making it feel fresh by giving it a totally different backdrop of being like like samurais in feudal Japan. And I thought, well, what
Sure.
kind of and I started me thinking in my head like well, if I was going to do my take on Macbeth, like what kind of backdrop would that? And then I kind of went, wait a minute, and I kind of put the two things together and thought wrestling and Macbeth and put them together. And the weird thing is like that once I started thinking about it, I actually clicked into place really easily because like a lot of it overlaps surprisingly well. Like the
Sure.
idea of like being like in Macbeth or all Shakespeare's plays, you have the soliloquies where someone will step forward and they'll talk to the audience and say they're in a
That's cut the promo. Yeah.
that's a wrestling promo.
Mhm.
And like you have like like even the scene with like Banquo's ghost visiting him when he's like it's like in the play it's a banquet for the lords, but I thought well we're going to have it during like a battle royal when all the wrestlers are fighting and the ghost appears. So all
Yeah.
lined up really well. And the interesting thing is people keep on saying to me like Shakespeare and wrestling's a bit of an odd combination, like high art and like low art and stuff, but people
Hmm.
forget the history of like Shakespeare. It wasn't like the idea of it being kind of like sophisticated, high end, only for the elites is actually a relatively new idea. At the time, and Shakespeare was alive and he was writing plays, the Globe Theatre was actually present like people would as London was a kind of growing city, it was starting to take shape. And people were going, let's go for a night out in the town and have some culture and some fun. They'd cross over this bridge into the kind of like sort of shady part of town that had all the brothels and like the fighting rings and stuff. And in the
Right.
middle of that was the Globe Theatre. And when you went in, it was kind of really rowdy. People were kind of like, there was like various like, illicit business dealings going on, and people were like getting into fights in the crowd, and people were chanting and shouting and heckling. And in this environment, the Globe Theatre wasn't like what we think of as a classic stage proscenium arch. Instead, the
Mhm.
Globe Theatre is called the Globe. The staging area was in the middle, and people would walk out down this walkway into the middle, and like the audience would be surrounding them like a wrestling ring.
Right. Right. Right.
And people would be like, all the audience had their favorite actors because it was the same actors would keep on playing different parts in all Shakespeare's.
Mhm.
So they would cheer for the actors they liked and boo the actors they didn't like, and you had to perform really big physical performances to kind of like play to the back rows. So essentially, it was like a wrestling show.
That's
So
yeah.
I was trying to kind of like
Absolutely.
that parallel in the story.
That's awesome. So that's kind of like, I guess, where the idea of Shakespeare in the round sort of comes from
Yeah,
because you're
yeah,
performing in a 360. That's very
yeah,
cool. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. I knew that I didn't know all those details, but I knew that Shakespeare was definitely written as more like entertainment for the
yeah,
masses
yeah. It's a
back
crowd
back
pleaser, like
then.
he
Yeah.
was like the kind of populist, Spielberg of his day.
Right, right. It's just like so my favorite classical composer is Tchaikovsky,
Yeah,
but at the time Tchaikovsky was like pop.
yeah,
You
exactly.
know,
That's the kind of stuff that was like seen as like it was like trendy music. It was like
yeah.
the club and like get some Tchaikovsky on. It's
It's like, and now I guess what made it pop music back then is what I like about it. Like it's so emotional and it's got
yeah.
moments where it's so big and then it gets so quiet and it's just like there's ebb and flow that you
Yeah.
don't
I mean,
always
like pop
get.
is popular, like it's like what has a wide appeal, and like that's like what's there in it.
Yeah. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So, the segues are just coming. So, speaking of popular, you
Yeah.
wrote an issue of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
I did, yeah.
Yeah. So,
But if I could go back in time, and talk to like 5-year-old me, he would probably be deeply unimpressed if I were to tell him about all the awards I've won and like all the various comics I've written. But if I were to say like I got to write a story with Michelangelo, that would blow his
yes.
mind. So,
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
yeah, it was a lot of fun that project, and the story behind that was I did like for reference, I did a one-shot issue in Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles universe, which was
Hmm.
the kind of spin-off series they have for a while. I did like issue 6.
Yep.
And it's like I got the chance to introduce the character of Worm, who'd only ever appeared like at the time as like the action figure line, and he was
Okay.
deemed too scary to actually be adapted into like the animated series back in the day. And
Hmm.
IDW had its own new continuity at the time, and they were introducing like all the old characters into this unified continuity. So I had the chance to introduce like their version of Worm.
Yeah.
And how that came about was Nick Patara, who was like the artist on the book. I'd known him a bit going back a while. Like he'd been a big supporter of it, and then Emily was gone. He'd done a variant cover for us, and he'd got it in front of some people, and we'd kind of kept in touch, and we were kind of like, got on well. And they'd asked Nick if he wanted to like write and draw an issue of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and he got back and said, "Well, I'll draw it, but I'll only draw it if it can be written by John Lees." And I'm sure everyone at IDW was like, "Who the fuck is John Lees?" But they said yes, and we came on board, and it was a great process. And like through that, I got like to meet. I got to know some of the editorial in IDW. I got like to know Bobby Curnow, the editor at the time. Actually, that's how I first worked with Sean Lee, who became the editor, the letterer on Sync, and various other projects I've done. So that ended up being really productive. And then it was through getting that first connection with IDW that I then did Mountainhead with IDW as well. So that ended up spinning off into other things. And it was great getting to do, because like that's probably the most kind of like, IP license type thing
Yeah.
that I've done so far. And I really enjoyed the process. And what was fun was the fun challenge about it was that when I read that, and I read the reviews and folk were saying this is like the darkest, scariest Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles comic I've read.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
I like the idea that like it hopefully feels like a Turtles comic, but still feels like a John Lee's comic. Like you could read that and you can imagine like, okay, this is what's going on here, but like over in Scotland, like Bonnie Shaw's out snatching kids in this same universe.
Right. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, there aren't very many uh, bigger properties than Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Maybe Mickey Mouse or something. But I mean,
Yeah, no, like the
you know,
amount of staying power that Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles has is
yeah,
incredible. And it's funny when I see like, and it keeps on coming back round. Like,
yeah,
I remember when I was a kid, I used to be obsessed with buying the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles action figures and going to see the movies. And
yeah,
then I'll be in the shops today and I'll see like, it's like, yeah, obviously you have a lot of like properties like that are still appealing to like and still relevant and still popular. But for example, if it's something like, I don't know, Batman or whatever, a lot of times the audience is getting older with us, and there's a lot of like high-end collectibles and adult comics that are getting appealing to
yeah,
old people. But with Turtles, it's like it's the kids that are still into it. Like, it's appealing to new generations of kids, and kids are still coming on board, and it still feels fresh and exciting to them. So I think that's really cool.
yeah, yeah. My son is 11, and he when he was little, he liked the turtles. He just thought they looked cool. But a couple weeks ago, maybe it was a month or so ago now, we were at the store, and he's starting to really get into reading a lot. And there was a Naruto Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles crossover book,
Ah,
and he was like, "Oh man, I gotta get this." And now he loves the turtles. He got some turtles for his birthday. He uh,
amazing.
he drew Michelangelo. He draws too, so like he he
I'm
got
sure
really
he's
good.
already better than me at drawing.
Oh man, he's
But
so
if I
much.
was to try and someone asked me if I could do like a remark on their copy of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and I drew
Yeah,
the worst Michelangelo you've ever seen in your life.
that's awesome. But yeah, turtles are forever. Like
Yeah.
they definitely keep on, new interest. It's funny how kids are like that though, like everything that I wanted to do as a kid, he does, but he does it 10 times better than I ever could have. So,
Yeah, and that's the wonder of getting older, like seeing yourself becoming redundant, the next generation ready to swallow you whole.
yeah, yeah, it's craziness.
But yeah,
Um
no, it's kind of thing like all the best thing we can do is like when we see like kids being creative like that is to encourage that creativity and be like the adults that we wanted to have, when we were kids.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I definitely you got to give kids space and the ability to become who they're going to be. That's what I
Totally.
think. And that's a very that wasn't really how we were raised in the 80s. But, it is what it is at this point.
Yeah.
So uh we talked a little bit about Oxymoron, but you actually had the chance to kind of expand on his canon.
Yeah, that was a really fun project.
Yeah,
Oxymoron, The Loveliest Nightmare.
right, right.
So the story behind that was we did obviously Tyler did the Red 10, And then following that, he did the Oxymoron anthology, where everyone did different short stories with the Oxymoron in them. And I remember I did a story in that where I wrote it and Tyler James drew it. I think it was the
Mhm.
last thing that Tyler James drew, so that must have been like I don't know if I ended his career,
He's like, I'm done after
but
this.
I kind of never done again. This is disgusting. But off the back of that, like Tyler wanted to keep on doing more Oxymoron stuff because Oxymoron was like the first breakout character. He was like the first comic stripe mascot essentially.
Yeah, yeah,
And so he came to me and said like I want to try and do like a prequel series or something that's technically a prequel but can be read as its own self-contained thing. Like, do you have any ideas of how you would do it? So. I came at him and I said my influences were very different from like what Tyler would have said. Like I was thinking, because he was thinking like the Dark Knight or something like a kind of supervillain type story, and I was
right.
like, have you seen this movie called I Saw the Devil? It's a Korean like revenge thriller.
Okay.
And I was telling him all these like Giallo films, like Deep Red, and I was saying like I wanted something that has this tone that's like totally different and really say how far can we push this? I wanted this to be savage, and I want it to be my kind of like thesis or my kind of like goal for the series was that this was going to be a series where you start off thinking Oxymoron's so cool because everyone it was Oxymoron was everyone's favorite character and you're like, oh,
Yeah,
he's so cool, he's like killing all the hypocrites and he's doing this and that, and by the
right.
end of it like you're horrified and you're like, how could I ever have liked this person, he's a monster.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
like that was the art I wanted to kind of take people on and over the course of the story, and that was like it was a lot of fun to work with Tyler on it. We co-wrote the book. But one of the most significant things of that for me in my career was that was the first project that I got to really work with Alex on. We'd done a short together before that, but in terms of full length project, this was our first collaboration, and it was a dream. Alex became like my comics life partner. Where like I just felt like our sensibilities were so in tune. And after the process of working on Oxymoron was done, I was like, I want to keep on working with you forever. Let's come up with new ideas.
Nice,
And like, so I've always had wanted to be collaborating on something ever since.
nice, nice. Yeah. So Tyler actually was a co-creator on Oxymoron, right?
Yeah, like Tyler Craig. I think like I believe that was written by Tyler
Okay.
and the original Oxymoron as he appeared in the Red 10 was created by Tyler James and artist Cesar Fuciano. But then when
Sure.
it came to Oxymoron, The Loveliest Nightmare, which I wrote, it was me and Tyler co-wrote it.
Yeah.
And then Alex was the artist.
So that's a lot of trust. Like this character is the flagship character that the publisher created, and then he gives it to you to kind of.
Yeah, no, I was a bit
That's
nerve-wracking to be honest. Like, you've
yeah.
given me your toys, I don't want to break them. So,
Right. Sure.
but, there was a certain level of confidence knowing well, ultimately it all has to lead into the Red 10. So like, I've got a lot, I'm on rails a little bit here. I can't go too far off the sandbox,
Right.
but it was a fun process in a lot of ways, like getting to work with an established world with established characters was a little bit of like a warm-up for getting to do like licensed stuff or work for hire stuff and learning how to kind of respect a character and work in their established voice.
Sure. So you've talked a lot about influences, movies and filmmakers and things like that. And it seems like you kind of think in a cinematic way. Have you thought about television and movies and things like that, or was comics always kind of the lane that you wanted to go in?
Well, originally, I've always loved comics, and I've always loved writing, but like the thought of like writing comics was actually like putting it together was actually relatively like new. Like I had started writing comics around 2008, but before that, I thought I was going to do like movies and like
Sure.
TV.
Okay.
I went to I studied like film at university.
Oh wow.
I put together like a budget for a short film, and then I ended up following through, and it was a bit of a loose end. And then like a friend of mine was like, do you want to try writing a comic for me? And then I kind of like discovered the medium of comics, and like I was fascinated by it. And like when you're writing film, so much of the process of writing film is like, you write a script, and then you go, okay, what am I able to shoot? And you're kind of cutting things out and limiting yourself, going, well, I can't do that, I can't do that. How do I work around this? How can I kind of like manage to pull this off? With comics, it's like, whatever you can write on the page, if your artist can draw it, you can do it.
Right.
Like, there's no limitations. And but also like conversely, comics structurally does have limitations. You only have so many panels per page, you only have so many pages per issues. So that's a challenge, like trying to find out how you can tell the story you want to tell within this framework. These limitations makes you forces you to be creative in interesting ways. And I think something I really enjoy is trying to find ways to bring like cinematic techniques or storytelling things you would normally associate with film and put
Yeah.
it in the world of comics, like and try and give people the illusion that they're watching a movie while they're reading comics. Like let them imagine they've seen something move or imagine they've heard a sound or create a sense of sound. I think if you can do that kind of stuff, that's an interesting world to navigate.
Yeah, I definitely think like And Then Emily Was Gone is a movie. I definitely like reading it. It feels, I mean, it's clearly a comic book I'm holding in my hand, but it feels like a movie. That's a very
Yeah.
cool
And
thing to be able to
Ian
do.
Laurie, the artist, he's a big movie guy as well. So I think they had a lot of
Oh,
like
okay.
cinematic
Awesome.
energy in that.
Yeah, awesome. Awesome. So, do you have any interest in exploring maybe just like a traditional comic book story? Like
Uh, do you mean like
like
a
like a villain who is really really bad and a hero who's super noble and they're just
I mean,
just straight.
I'm not like being like facetious or being like stupid when I say this, but genuinely I always start off thinking I'm going to tell a normal story this time,
Okay.
and then it just gets weird the more I develop it.
Yeah.
Like because I'll start with a straightforward idea of like like what if it's a good person and a bad person, and
Yeah.
then like I'll start throwing in things. Well, what if this happened? And what if I brought this element in? What if I did that? And it becomes like steadily weird as I go on. So I can't help myself. It seems like.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, no, like it's like I mean, but the funny
It's
thing
just not in there, I guess.
yeah, but that's the funny thing about like comics or any storytelling really that I kind of feel like this isn't necessarily the exact same point but somewhat related, but I always think that it's hard to kind of come into a story going, I want to talk about this theme. I've got an idea of doing like this big, relevant, like, social, political theme or idea. I think it's hard to do that if you're self-consciously trying to do it.
Yeah.
But if like, you're writing a story just to write it, like, because so generally I'll be coming in with something of like, what if I did a story about like, a big monster woman that was hot? And as I'm writing this, and then like over the course of writing the stories, well, actually this is about body image and self-confidence and
Sure.
anxiety and like, and how to exist in a world where social media requires you to create a curated version of yourself and the pressures of masking and being like, sort of like a contained version of yourself and who do
Yeah.
you trust to let in? Like, that thing, if I'd tried to kind of like write something like that self-conscious from the start, I probably would have failed. But sometimes like where stories take you is kind of surprise and that's part of the fun of the journey.
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure. I think like I feel like there's heroes who when they get messed with, everyone is like, whoa. Um, do you have anybody like that maybe you would want to tackle and sort of spin them around a little bit? And
I mean, it's interesting. Like, obviously, I mean, I'm a big superhero fan. Like, I love, like, like a lot. I'm a big Superman, not big Spider-Man fan, big
yeah,
Batman fan. Like, Batman's my favorite character in fiction. Like, of course, I would love to write, like, a Batman comic at some point.
sure,
But
sure.
if I was to do it, it'd probably have to be like a like a black label or kind of like a dark pattern style, like off to the side little
Mhm.
mini series. Because like I see like the dogs abuse the creators get like when they're writing these like mainline books, like
Yeah,
it's like someone posting a picture on Instagram going like, here's a picture of me on holiday with my family in the comments, like you ruined Catwoman by doing this and issue like
yeah,
343. I want you to die. And it's like I
yeah.
don't think I can handle that, But yeah, no, like so yeah, I would love to do like a superhero story, but like you said, I'd probably end up getting really weird. Like I'd want to bring in Laurie on board and do some kind of weird surrealist,
Right.
Lovecraftian like horror Batman, or like or like do like a kind of Spider-Man where he's like neurotic and like is like dealing with like real issues, or like what if we do a superhero comic that's really kinky and like freaky and weird, like I would probably end up like like
Yeah.
why are all these people in tight costumes not fucking like
Right. Fair.
like,
Yeah.
well, like, DC carrying me out of the office season from me on the street, the mid pitch, So like that would, so like it would be hard to kind of like, come up with something classic. But
Yeah,
yeah, no, it'd be a fun challenge to try. So definitely I'm up for it.
yeah.
Marvel and DC.
I'm trying to think like Wally West. I don't think anybody's ever really done anything super screwed up with him. You know, so
Generally, like, I'll give you this pitch for free because I'm sure like DC will never use it.
yeah, sure.
But one point, like as like a kind of like fun exercise for myself, this was like maybe going back 10 years ago now.
Mhm.
I decided I was gonna just try writing a bunch of like little mini pitches for DC and like Marvel characters,
Yeah,
and what I came up with the Flash was like it follows, but at the speed of sound, like the speed of light, like like some kind of monster that's kind of like can't shake off. Like I
yeah,
thought it'd be some fun to do something like that.
yeah. So I don't know. There was a Harley Quinn movie a few years back that was not very good. It was an animated movie, and she actually rapes Nightwing in the movie,
Oh,
and
I've
then he
seen that.
falls in
I've
love
not
with
seen the
her.
episode, but I've seen the clip of it that gets
Yeah,
shared.
yeah,
Like,
yeah. She rapes him, and then he becomes obsessed with her and won't leave her alone. That is
yeah.
a weird message, man. I was like,
Yeah,
whoa.
that just in general, like this is the weird thing, right? But I can happily read like, the most depraved, like wild, violent, stuff. But weirdly still I get weirded out by superheroes like saying swear words. Like, like if I'm watching like, like the Superman movie and Superman says shit, I'm like, that doesn't seem right. Superman wouldn't say shit. Like, or if I'm watching the Batman movie and he's like, happy fucking Halloween. Like don't say that in front of Batman. How dare
What?
you?
Like the Punisher,
Yeah,
maybe, but
Punisher, yeah,
yeah,
but
he can curse. But he's not really a superhero. Um, so if someone is listening to this podcast and they're like, "Man, this guy seems like a super interesting guy. Um, he's funny. He's written some pretty cool books. What is the book that you think they should read first?"
oh, that's a good question. I'm gonna cheat and give a couple of
Sure,
answers
go for it, man.
here.
Yeah.
First thing, well, I think like, the thing that's maybe my trademark book, or the one that I'm best known for, is Sync, which has now had 3 volumes. It's my longest running series. Um, 3 volumes have been released. Issue four is coming. Oh, sorry, volume four is coming out next year. It's a anthology series. It's kind of like a hard-boiled crime horror type story set in Sink Hill, which is this nightmarish, forgotten district of Glasgow. Each story is kind of self-contained, but they're all connected by this overarching like shared location and like a bigger story gradually taking shape. And you meet like various like strange characters in St. Kill. You have Mr. Dig, who's a fox mask wearing vigilante who bludgeons criminals with a shovel. You have the blue van clowns, who are based on an actual Scottish urban legend, who are clowns who drive around in a blue transit van, snatching people and cutting them up and turning them into clowns as well. And you have like Cy McCurdy, who's essentially Grant Morrison put in my comic as like the local crime boss. And then you have like Kieran and Louise, who are this couple who kind of like are in the middle of doing some kind of BDSM roleplay session, and like the various kind of clowns and criminals break in and they have to fight them off. And you have all these different characters and like they're transversing like different genres. You have like horror stories, you have crime stories, you have action stories, you have like comedy. But because so I guess my list would do all different types of things, but it's all connected with this shared overarching location of Sink Hill, so it all feels like they're all Sink stories. And like
Awesome.
as some of my favorite writing I've done is in that series. Like the latest volume, Sink 3, had a story which went back into the past and was about like the Gorbals vampire, which is another actual urban legend in Scotland. It was in the 1950s about this iron-toothed vampire supposedly who was like snatching children and killing them.
All
Um,
right.
because so it follows this story about this kind of girl who encountered the vampire, and it goes and then it follows on to like the present day when she's like an older woman, and she's like convinced that Iron Tooth Jack, the Gorbals vampires, came back, and that character was based on she's called Chrissy Woods, and that was based on Chrissy Lee's My Gran. And I remember going back like before I even started writing comics, my gran always used to say like I want you to like do something about like it tells like my story or like or tells a story like my childhood growing up in post-war Glasgow and to tell me these stories. And obviously my gran never fought a vampire, but like I managed to fit in like lots of little anecdotes and stories that she told me. So like it doesn't matter if I ever get to write Batman or anything like that. The proudest like achievement of my comics career will always be being able to give this comic to like my gran at 90 years old. I'm for to read it and go like, oh, I recognize this and that, and you finally did it, you know. So that was like a really important book to me. The other comic I'll plug is my newest series, which is Orla, which is a horror rom-com. About this woman who like is navigating the single scene in Seattle while dealing with loneliness, body image issues, and the fact that she sometimes turns into a giant man-eating monster. Um, and like so, it's this affliction she calls the ick, which always emerges when she gets too scared or angry or
Hmm.
stressed, and she can't rid herself of it. So she says she's going to use it for good by like dating and devouring the shittiest men in the dating pool. And then like what happens when she meets someone that she actually likes? So it becomes a story about kind of accepting yourself and like learning to let people in and trust them. And like for me, like it was an interesting project because it's in a lot of ways it's outside my normal wheelhouse. Like, you know, yes, it's got horror elements, but it's actually quite sweet and funny and it's like, you know, a comedy and it's got romance. And like Sara Cantarino, the artist, like is really drawn heavily from the like inspiration like old romance comics and the aesthetic of it.
Hmm.
And so it's a bit different from what I've normally done, but looking back, I think it might be some of my best writing I've ever done. It might be the book that I'm most proud of. In the last issue of the series, we get released monthly, and the final issue comes out next week. I don't know when this is going live, but it's going out Christmas Eve. That's when it comes out.
Okay.
And then the collected edition of the series, you know, the collected graphic novel is in comic shops on March 3rd. So, like, you've missed this series, it's gone under the radar, and you're interested in checking out a new book from me. Orla is going to be available for pre-order in January. So, like, your comic shop know that you want it, or order it from bookshop.org. It's going to be in bookshops as well through Simon and Schuster. So, that's coming out in March. So, if you want to check out something from me, that would be one I'd recommend.
Awesome, man. Awesome. So, what company is that book being published by?
Orla is made by Bad Cave Studios.
Okay. Okay. So, you've done a few different things for Comics Tribe, but you do kind of jump from publisher to publisher. Um, is that just kind of how it works when you're an independent writer, or
Yeah, that's just like the case of like, you know, that's just like the way it works in terms of like building up connections and you know, like you'll go to conventions, you'll meet editors and they'll say, oh, I liked this book that you did for Comics Tribe, would you maybe consider like pitching something to us, you know, or like, you know, or someone will say, oh, I read that book you did with Vault Comics, you know, like if you have any ideas, you know, you want to send our way, you know, go for it. Like, you know, so yeah, I mean, like my take on it is I'll always have a relationship with Comics Tribe. Like I'll always be trying to do something with them. But like, you know, also like it's fun to kind of like go off and work with other publishers and see what the dynamic is and kind of like spread, you know, my influence around a little bit because different publishers have different connections and different networks and there's certain like, you know, publishers who, you know, have ins with like, you know, certain retailers or like with market and promotion. So it's all about widening your audience and kind of like broadening your scope and your sphere of influence. So the more people you can work with, the more connections you can make. And the fun thing is if you're like someone like me who's like, you know, getting older and like and has been in comics for a while, you
yeah,
start to get this thing of like you'll work with someone in one publisher and then you'll leave that publisher and they'll go to another publisher and they're like, you know, oh, hi, remember me? Like, you know, why don't you come on and work with me in this thing? So it means like you then follow like editors from publisher to publisher and that like also expands your like you know like connections, you know, places that you work with.
yeah. I feel like at this point too, because like you work on Oxymoron and Sync and Emily, you can kind of sell books at least to an extent. Like there are people who follow what you do. So
I'd
there's
like to think
probably
so.
yeah, and there's probably publishers who want you to
Yeah.
come and write for them because they know that your name is gonna bring a certain
I mean,
amount of
like,
fans.
that's something like that I've definitely always like wanted. I mean, I'm not saying I'm Scott Snyder. I'm
Right.
not saying you know that like that I'm like you know Jim Lee, but like even if it's like when like one person like you know will come up to me at a convention or like you know oh I was such a big fan of this book I'll pick up anything you do or like you know I have a book that's announced and I see like one comment saying like oh John Lee's never misses like you know to know like you know that you know you've done something like you know your body of work is like you know got a reputation. There's people who
Yeah.
actually like are excited about it and are waiting for more from you. Like, and if you can even like you know have that level of connection or resonance with one person out there in the world, like that makes it all feel worthwhile that you've done something that's bigger than just yourself.
Yeah, definitely. I'm a big Rags Morales fan,
Yeah, he's
and
a
I actually went and bought all of those TSR like Dungeons and Dragons books that he did when he first.
Oh yeah.
And I mean they're so cheap. They're like 80 cents a piece. But I was like I have like the very first thing that Rags ever drew in a comic, and it was
Yeah,
a
that history there, and that's the great thing, and that stuff's always going to like even if a comic book has an initial release window, like once it's done, the stuff's always out there waiting to be
yeah.
discovered. So there's a comic's always going to be new to somebody, or like an art book, or D&D or whatever's going to be new to somebody, like all the time. So it's always like a chance to find a new audience.
Yeah, definitely. So what stuff do you have coming out in 2026? I mean 2025 is basically wrapped up at this point, but
Oh yeah, it's that wonderful time of year we start thinking about all
yeah.
the things you never got done
What's
in time.
going on next
Oh
year?
God. But yeah, like so in terms of 2026, first thing up in 2026, as mentioned, is Orla. The graphic novel collection's coming out. And then in 2026, I have, again, as I touched on, Zinc Volume 4 is coming out. We've been doing, as I mentioned earlier on, Comics Tribe has a kind of hybrid model where they do Kickstarter. Their approach is they'll do Kickstarter at first and they'll do like deluxe editions, like containing like, a couple of issues bundled into one with extra features and
Mhm.
stuff. And then after they've already been released, they then go to comic shops. They release the book monthly in comic shops. And
Yeah.
after they've done that, they then go back to Kickstarter and crowdfund the collected edition. So like we've started like we did the Sync Halloween special like back during Halloween this year. And that's going to be going out to backers. We've just sent it off to print, so that's going to be out to backers by early 2026. And we've got the next two campaigns lined up. The next one's going to be called Pineapple. That launches like and I want to say like late winter, early spring 2026. So we're going to have like Sync Volume 4 is going to be rolling out in 2026. Plus, we've got The Curious Trade of Grogor and Shanks, which is another Comics Tribe book, which is a kind of blend of high fantasy with mystery procedural. I've been saying it's like Lord of the Rings meets Knives Out. So basically, the premise
Nice.
of it is Von Grogor, who's this traveling tailor. Who isn't a particularly good tailor, but he's enthusiastic. And he has a big kind of hulking, like, sullen orc steward called Arlog Shanks. And these guys go from town to town and they keep on getting caught up in various like mysteries and crimes. And people keep on turning to them for help. And they're like, well, we're not adventurers, we're merchants, we're tailors. So they keep on making deals with people like if people are willing to buy clothes from them, they will then solve their mysteries and their crimes and stuff. So I get to do like kind of like high fantasy spins on like murder mysteries or serial killers or identity theft or various like modern crimes seen through a fantasy lens. And it's kind of taking a sync formula where every episode or every issue is a standalone, fully contained adventure. So you get a full like story with every issue. And it's been a lot of fun to work on. Again, it's something outside my normal wheelhouse, but it's been a lot of fun to write. Like Grogor and Shanks, two of my favourite characters I've written. I think they both feel really well realised. And Joe Mulvey, who has been one of my oldest friends in comics again, like I've known him going back to like 2011. This is the first extended project we've had the chance to work on together, and like he's been killing it on art. So again, that's been running through Kickstarter, but in 2026, that's going to be coming out in comic shops as well. So look out for that. So that's going to be so 2026 is a big comics tribe year for me. I've got some other things lined up with other publishers, but they're looking like 2027 for releases because they're kind of like bigger long form projects. But
Sure.
2026, watch out for those books.
Awesome, awesome. That last book sounds really cool. I love
Oh yeah,
stuff like that.
Grogan Shanks, yeah.
Yeah, I love stuff like that.
Yeah,
That's
no, it's been a
awesome.
lot of fun to work on. Like I say, it's a four-issue miniseries, but I've already written like another four issues like after the initial four, so I really hope it takes off and I can do more because like I love this world and these characters.
Awesome, awesome. So, you probably have no idea about this, but I can't let you go without asking. I am a massive fan of Epic.
Oh,
Uh,
cool, yeah.
yeah, when that last issue came out, after what was it
It was
like
again, it was like, like a
6
decade later.
years or something like that?
Yeah. Yeah.
However long it was, I was so excited. Do you know when there's another one coming?
Oh, like actually, I think I have to apologize in that front because I
Nah,
think
you're
like
fine.
well, no. For me, I think it's my fault because like I've monopolized Comics Tribe's Kickstarter calendar like for the next few
Ah,
months. It's all Sync campaigns and Goggle and Shanks campaigns. I think he's gonna
yeah.
eventually get like back to Epic once he's got through the backlog of my project. So hopefully at some point 2026. I can't say with any authority, but as far as I know,
Yeah,
he's planning to do more.
I hope so. It's a great book. Like
Yeah, no, I
it's
love it. It's a great concept. And see, I remember
it's
I had the front row seat, like watching them pitch it at conventions, and every time you see
yeah.
like the pitch of like like a teenage kid who loses his powers, never gets horny, you can see people like
Right?
laughing
It's like
because it's such a fun
what?
idea. It's like the teenage experience in the shell, and like so, yes, it's a really fun hit. And I think like it kind of feels like Invincible is really in right now, and a lot of like kind of stuff like that. It was kind of before
Yeah,
its time almost. I think like the audience is there now that would really be in for something like this if it were to
yeah.
get more exposure. So yeah, I hope it does come back again soon.
Yeah, I mean if you think about comic book superheroines or even super villainesses,
Yeah.
they don't leave a lot to the imagination a lot of the time. So
Yeah, so it's
imagine being,
and
you
like
know,
the what like they show it with the kryptonite of like hormonal teenage boys. So I think definitely.
so funny. It's seriously like one of the best comics. I wish there was more of it. So
Yeah.
I'm
And I
looking
feel really
forward to it.
bad. I've totally blanked on the artist's name. He's a really talented artist as
Oh,
well.
he's really, really good. He reminds
Um,
me of oh, well, I don't know. Are you familiar with the original Generation X run? Gen
I
X?
could maybe not be on like the covers and stuff, but like
Okay, his art is really similar to that art, I
yeah.
think. Yeah, it's really
Yeah,
good
I
though.
think that's actually part of why Epic went on such a long hiatus because the artists get snapped up to do like a whole bunch of licensed stuff at IDW for
Fair.
a few years.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, he's really good, so that's fair. Uh,
Yeah,
so
yeah, no, really cool book.
what's that?
I said it's a really cool book. Yes, I'm
Yeah,
glad
yeah,
people out there reading it.
yeah. Um, so before we get out of here, uh, is there a place online where people can find you? If people want to get your books, should they go through the publishers or do you have like a store?
Um,
Just go ahead and anything that you
yeah, I'm glad you asked. Like
want
I've
to throw
got
out there.
okay, first stop would be johnleescomics.com. If you go there, there's like a little like like guide to my various books and my bibliography and the comics that I've released. And each book has its own section with a little blurb and information of where you can buy it and like etc. etc. And also you have a link to my newsletter, which goes out every Friday without fail and has done every Friday since 2017. And that's like the best place to keep up with the latest news from me. Like, you have like behind the scenes sneak peeks of my various upcoming projects. You have original essays and features from me. You have a whole bunch of other stuff in there. So I definitely recommend signing up to my newsletter if you're interested in keeping in touch with me. And then in terms of online shops, I have johnleescomics.bigcartel.com. That's johnleescomics.bigcartel.com. I would say, just a word of warning, I do have like a wide selection of stuff there. All my recent books are all there available to buy. However, thanks to a certain person putting tariffs in place in the US, it's became extremely expensive to order it if you're in America.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I will still ship to people who want to buy in America, but I just want to apologize that it's extremely expensive. It's not me like being greedy. I'm losing money whenever time I make these sales, but I have to put the
Yeah.
prices up because that's how expensive it is to ship to America now. So if you're interested in a book and you don't want to pay for like the extreme shipping, like a lot of like my books are available on Amazon. Or like the Comics Tribe books, like Sync, you can go to sync.comicstribe.com or comicstribe.com/sync. I can't remember which one it is, but either one of the two. And you'll go there and you can get it from it, and then you can buy it from the publisher at Comics Tribe, and then it's in the US, you don't have to pay for shipping. So there are multiple options for getting my books. And then also if you want to follow me on socials, the main platform that I use is Blue Sky, johnlees.bsky.social, whatever you call it over there. And I'm
Yeah.
also on Instagram as well at johnlees927. And yeah, that's the big stuff to keep in touch with me if you want to. I'm sure there'll be like some information on the little board below where like,
Yeah.
you can put like links and stuff. But
Yeah.
um, yeah, that's all. That's the best places to find me.
All right, awesome. I was obviously heading towards wrapping up, but I do want to make a comment real quick. I
Yeah,
love Australian rock. I
yeah.
love it. I don't know what it is about people from Australia, but they make good music. I can't get Australian CDs anymore
Yeah, it's
because
like
it's like $40 now to get,
yeah.
you know.
And it's like I think it's like it's all going inward. Like obviously here in the UK, like we have our own postage issues with Brexit and all that, where that's put prices up. But for the US especially, like it's everybody like who's trying to ship into the US, whether it be Australia or the UK or Europe, like the costs are astronomical now. And like I feel really bad about it because like a lot of my like audience is in America, but like I feel like it's freezing it out, and I feel bad about it. Hopefully you guys can get it sorted out soon.
Yeah, I hope so, man. But yeah, just a little statement there because come on, you know.
Yeah, but we need an Australian rock.
Yeah, yeah, I can't, I need like I listen. I'm just not even gonna. Maybe I'll talk about it on my music podcast. But yeah, um, yeah, I I go out of my way to like make Australian rock playlists, and then I will hear new stuff because then you get recommended songs, and then I go to try to find the CD, and yeah,
And then it's
can't get it
people are
shipped
trying to
here.
find it.
Can't get it shipped here.
Yeah.
But
You
yeah,
getting CDs in general is not pill battle these days. Never mind Australian rock CDs.
yeah. Well, I have almost 5,000 CDs.
I'll tell you now, like
One of my
genuinely
things.
speaking, like you're better off with CDs. Your CDs and DVDs and Blu-rays, physical media is the way to go. Especially increasingly now is like because like, I've noticed this. Have you noticed there's like a lot of films like it seems like we've lived through the time of peak availability for music and DVDs and for music and films.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of stuff now you just can't get anymore if it's not on like streaming, if it's not on iTunes, if it's not on Spotify, it just doesn't exist.
Yes.
So like
Yes.
if we're not hoarders, if we have our physical media, we are the keepers of the knowledge. We are keeping the culture alive.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I actually whenever I have musicians on, but I mean this also there's a reason why I asked if you had a store. I mean this applies to comic book writers, anyone creating art. Um More money is going to go into your guys' pocket if you buy a physical
Yeah.
copy. That's
Yeah, and I
just
always
how it
try and make it feel
works.
like anything anyone buys from me, I'll sign it. I usually write like a little handwritten thank you note with a postcard. I try and make it feel personal.
Yeah, absolutely. So see, and you don't get that downloading something. It's just not how it works. And I'm an old man. I'm 51. Shouting at the sky. But
Yeah, I'm 39, which is like a Glasgow 60, so I know you're doing.
oh man. All right. Okay, so first of all, John, thank you so much for making me laugh. Thank you for the information. Thank you for being such an awesome guest. And for the
Well, thank you for having
stories.
me. I had a great time chatting to you.
Yeah, this has been a lot of fun. It's funny because this 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 podcast used to be very structured, and then I decided I was going to switch to like a free form conversation format because I felt like it was getting too repetitive.
Yeah,
And
that's
then
just like
some,
a series of questions you're asking the same people every time. Yeah.
yeah, and sometimes I'm like, I don't feel like I'm getting enough information out. So maybe I should go back to the old format. And then I have a conversation like this, and we jumped all over the place. It was so fun. And I think
No,
we,
it's dangerous. I know sometimes I'm with it. I just like once I start talking, I just won't stop. Like,
yeah, but hey,
once you start me talking about my favorite subject, myself, like,
that's the
I'm not going to stop.
that's the best guess, honestly. When I had Rags Morales on here, we did 3 hours.
Yeah,
The
wow.
guy has so many stories, man. And I mean, he's been in the business for ever. But
Yeah.
yeah, that was my first 2-part show because he just talked, man. Like, so it was
Well, that's,
very
that's
cool.
that's impressive though. Like, especially now, it's been cool. Like, given like you said, you're such a fan of Rags, to be able to have that kind of conversation with him.
Man, yeah. I've had pretty much everyone that I've ever really, really admired on this show at this point, whether it was music or comic books. It's been crazy. I love the fact that people actually want to come on here and talk to me. It's super
Yeah,
fun.
well, like a lot of creative people are spending a lot of time like by ourselves creating
Yeah.
stuff. So when you have an opportunity to come and talk to people, it's nice.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, John, thank you so much for doing this. I also want to thank Sydney, your manager.
Oh
Right?
yeah, Sidney
Yeah,
Selly, my
for
manager, who's
setting this thing
great.
up, man.
We've
Thank
worked
you.
together for
This,
like a decade now, and he's
yeah.
like always been really helpful and really friendly and really supportive.
Yeah, he was really, really cool. Like, he asked me why I wanted to talk to you, and then he was like, okay, I love this. And then he hooked us up. So that was really awesome. It was
Thanks,
easy.
Sydney.
Yeah, it was super easy. So thank you, Sydney. Thank you to my guy, Tyler Martin, this Emmy Studios. This podcast would not happen without Tyler. I say it every single week, but it is the truth. If it wasn't for Tyler, I would just be recording these things and not knowing what to do with them afterwards.
That's what we
So,
have in common. We both owe so much to people called Tyler.
yeah, what's that?
So that's what we have in common. We both owe so
Oh yeah,
much
we
to
both
people
have.
called
Yeah,
Tyler.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I have Tyler
Everyone
Martin,
needs
and
a
you have
Tyler.
Tyler James. Yeah. So yeah, Tyler, thank you so much. Thank you to everyone who tunes in to the show. We're probably going to take the next couple weeks off because Christmas and New
I think we'll allow
Year's.
you to have a break for Christmas. I think it's okay.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to get like literally we record on Thursdays,
Yeah.
and the recording dates are Christmas and New Year's Day.
Yeah, no,
So
yeah,
it's
no.
like,
I think no, no. I mean,
yeah,
even if somehow against the odds you were to put a recording out, who's going to
yeah,
be listening? They're all going to be in turkey comas. So
yeah. Well, we put the shows out on Tuesday,
yeah. Also,
so
yeah.
I still might record something brief,
Yeah.
but it
But
won't
don't
be.
put any pressure on yourself. Do it. Have a little Christmas jumper on, just a little
Yeah,
Merry Christmas. Be quite nice. Keep it fun.
yeah, definitely. It won't be me and a guest. It'll just be me being whatever I do. Well, kind of,
Yeah.
I did something similar for Thanksgiving, so we'll see how all that goes.
Just you're next like a roaring fireplace, like a little glass of like.
Man, so I mean, we're getting away from comic books and stuff, and obviously, I am going to wrap this thing up at some point. But have you seen these fireplaces now that like don't make smoke,
Yeah,
and you can set them in your house,
yeah.
and
I
you
mean,
can
what I'm
cook
obsessed
things
with,
on them and stuff?
have you seen these things people just put like is it on their TV and it's just like a kind of like crack on the fireplace
Oh,
like
sure, yeah, yeah,
it
yeah,
looks like
yeah. But this is actually fire. It's like a metal box,
Oh yeah, and
and
I
and
keeps up.
you put whatever kind of fluid they send. Like obviously, you don't put like and it burns in your house. No smoke, no danger.
Oh wow, okay, I haven't heard of
Yeah,
that. That's pretty
it's
cool.
wild, right? And you can just set it in the middle of the room. It doesn't have to have a chimney.
Oh, well, that's
It's
amazing.
the craziest thing, and it's
Well,
not.
technology is a beautiful thing.
I think it's like $149. It's not even that expensive. Like that doesn't seem that expensive to me to have fire that you can just put in the middle of your house. It just seems so cool. But
Yeah, that, a
yeah.
little bit. Yeah, but for it's weird though. Like, I just love the sound of like like a
Oh,
crackling
sure.
fire. I think it's just like that's ASMR for me.
Yeah, my son and I have built bonfires since he was young, like since he was
Yeah.
like 2 or 3. I was like, "Come on, bud, let's go build some fires." And so we go outside and make fires and
That's
then
all.
have fun with that. So, um,
Especially this time of year when it's like really cold, just want a little fire.
yeah, yeah. Well, in Indiana, it's a little harder to make fires outside this time of year,
Oh
but
yeah, no, no, okay. That too for Glasgow.
right. Oh,
I've always
sure,
said
yeah.
I've always said the four seasons of Scotland is like spring's heavy rain, summer's warm rain, autumn's depressing rain, and winter's cold rain. So
Man, I am from a town in upstate New York called Ithaca.
yeah, yeah, no, yeah,
Okay, cool. So it rains there all the time. And when
yeah,
it's not raining, it's super windy
yeah.
because the wind blows off the lake because it's
Mhm.
surrounded by lakes.
Yeah,
So
when you're
like,
next to the
yeah,
sea, like or coastal, like it's always like
yeah,
back
yeah, yeah.
cottages
So
in the
so I
background.
grew up in a place where it was always either raining or windy or both.
Yeah.
Like it was, yeah, yes. But yeah,
Sounds like home.
yeah. But John, thank you again. Thank you so much. This has been so fun. Um, and we do have one guest booked so far for the new year. It's a pro wrestler. Her name is Vicious Vicky. She has a really inspirational story of recovery, and then now, I mean, she's really starting to come on in the wrestling business. So she's gonna come on. We've got a
Awesome.
couple other irons in the fire. So we've got some good stuff coming up for you guys in 2026, and of course, My Taste in Music Sucks, which is the music podcast, will continue to come out every week with myself and Christopher Icon. And I think that's everything. So, John, again, thank you. This has been so fun.
Thank you so much, and Merry Christmas when it comes as
Merry
well.
Christmas, Happy New Year, yeah. And we will be back. Uh, with some little short things, but with real new content in 2026 with more Most Excellent Entertainment.